My name is Lucas. I'm 28 years old, and this is the story of how I discovered my fiancé was having an affair with the pastor of our church. Yes, you heard that right. The man who was supposed to bless our union, who was set to conduct our wedding ceremony in just 3 weeks, had been sleeping with my future wife for over 6 months. And the way I found out was the most humiliating imaginable. I caught them both in the pastor's own bed, in a back room of the church, when I went to deliver the wedding rings I had just picked up from the jeweler. But what happened after that shocking discovery was even worse. I met Marília 3 years ago during a spiritual retreat for our congregation. She was one of the leaders of the youth ministry, a woman seemingly devoted to God, with solid values and a traditional family behind her. I had been a deacon at the church for 5 years. I've always been a man of faith, raised in a devout home, and I saw in her the perfect woman to build a Christian family with. Pastor Samuel arrived at our church about a year and a half ago. He was a charismatic, eloquent man, married for 15 years with 3 children. He quickly became a respected and admired figure to everyone. Marília always praised his sermons, saying he was a true man of God. I admired him deeply myself. Our engagement was announced 8 months ago, celebrated with a party and the blessing of the entire congregation. Pastor Samuel was the first to congratulate us, telling us we were a couple blessed by God. The irony is sickening. Everything began to change about 4 months ago. Marília started dedicating even more of her time to church activities, extra meetings, choir rehearsals, pastoral counseling. There was always an excuse for her to be there. At first, I found her spiritual commitment beautiful. What man wouldn't be proud to have a fiancé so devoted to the house of God? But slowly, I started to notice certain changes. She seemed different after those meetings, more distant, lost in thought. When I asked about them, her answers were always vague. It was good, she'd say. We talked about evangelism. Or, we prayed for the youth of the church. Always something generic. Our intimacy changed too. Marília had always been affectionate, but she began to avoid long kisses, deep hugs. I chalked it up to her being tired, stressed with the wedding preparations. I believed her. After all, planning a wedding is genuinely exhausting. What intrigued me most was her phone. Marília had always been casual with it, leaving it anywhere, never caring if I picked it up to check the time. Suddenly, she started carrying it with her everywhere, even to the bathroom. When it rang, she would tense up, hiding the screen. She'd claim they were messages from the church group or her family. One night, about 3 months ago, I was picking her up from choir practice. As she got out of the car to say goodbye to her parents at the gate, she forgot her phone on the seat. I know it was wrong, but suspicion had been eating away at me. I picked it up and saw several notifications from Pastor Samuel. My first instinct was to open them, but I held back. I tried to be a man of principle. I couldn't invade my fiancé's privacy. But the thought of those messages hammered away at my mind. In the weeks that followed, I started paying closer attention. During services, I noticed the glances between them. Nothing obvious, but a man in love notices these details. The way Pastor Samuel looked at Marília as she sang in the choir. The way her smile was different when he preached. I tried to convince myself I was imagining things. that my mind was creating fantasies out of pre-wedding stress. 2 months ago, I learned that Pastor Samuel was offering free premarital counseling to engaged couples in the church. Marília suggested we take the opportunity. It would be good to talk to him about our expectations for marriage, she said. I readily agreed, thinking it would be beneficial for our relationship. The sessions were on Tuesday evenings after the prayer service. The first one was normal. We talked about family, children, finances, future plans. Pastor Samuel conducted everything professionally, gave us advice based on the Bible, and prayed for us. I left feeling edified, with the sense that our union was truly being blessed. In the second session, something strange happened. Pastor Samuel suggested it would be better to speak with us individually first, before we met as a couple again. This way, I can better understand the specific needs of each of you, he explained. It seemed logical. We agreed. Marília went first. She was in there for almost 2 hours. When she came out, her eyes were red, as if she had been crying. I asked if she was okay. She said it had been very emotional, that Pastor Samuel had helped her understand certain things about herself. When it was my turn, he seemed distracted, rushed. Our conversation lasted only 40 minutes. From then on, Marília began having weekly, individual sessions. It's a process of self-discovery, she would explain. Pastor Samuel is helping me prepare to be a better wife, according to God's heart. How could I question something like that? It was about spiritual growth, Christian maturity, but the changes intensified. Marília grew more distant. When I tried to kiss her, she'd pull away. When I suggested romantic moments, she'd say she was praying for us to remain pure until the wedding. Ironically, our physical intimacy had never been an issue before. We had always respected biblical boundaries, but there was always warmth, the normal physical affection between an engaged couple. One night, about a month and a half ago, I dropped her off after one of these sessions. She was completely distraught, crying in the car, babbling nonsensically about temptation, sin, and God's will. I tried to calm her down, asking what had happened. She said she was fighting impure thoughts, that the devil was attacking our union. Pastor Samuel had prayed for her, she said, but the process of liberation would be long. That night, when I got home, I made a decision that would change everything. The next day, when I went to pick her up for our weekly date, I would take her phone and read the messages. What I discovered made my world collapse. Dozens of messages between her and Pastor Samuel. At first, they seemed normal, about counseling, Bible verses, prayers. But as I scrolled up, I saw the evolution of something very different. Affectionate messages, then romantic, then clearly intimate. I can't stop thinking about you, one of his messages read. Me neither, she replied. What's happening between us is a sin, but it feels so right. God will forgive us. We're fighting something bigger than ourselves. When can I see you again? I need to feel you close to me. I read horrors, conversations about secret meetings, about how to hide from others, about how much they were in love. There were photos, too, intimate photos that a fiancée should never send to another man, let alone her pastor. The most devastating revelation was in a conversation from a week prior. What about Lucas? Pastor Samuel asked. I'll break up with him after the wedding, she wrote. I can't cancel now. It would be a scandal. My family would kill me. We'll go through with the ceremony, and after a few months, I'll arrange a separation. I'll say we discovered we were incompatible. And me? How am I supposed to perform the ceremony knowing all this? You're an actor, Samuel. You always have been. Just play your part as the exemplary pastor. Marry us, and then we can get on with our lives together. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. My fiancée wasn't just cheating on me. She was planning to use our wedding as a sham, only to discard me later. And the man who was supposed to bless us, whom I considered a spiritual father, was a willing accomplice in this diabolical performance. I spent the entire night planning what to do. My first impulse was to confront them immediately, to cause a scene, to expose everything to the entire church. But then I thought better of it. If they were capable of such deceit, I needed irrefutable proof. Accusations weren't enough. I needed to catch them in the act. For the next few days, I acted normally. I pretended I knew nothing, continued to treat Marília with affection, and greeted Pastor Samuel respectfully at church. Inside, I was dying. Every kiss she gave me was a stab in the back. Every handshake with him was an insult. I began to investigate discreetly. I discovered they met on Thursday afternoons, when she was officially visiting the sick, and he was engaged in theological studies. I followed Marília once and confirmed it. She went straight to the pastoral house, located at the back of the church. The plan was simple. The following Thursday, I would wait for them to meet and then show up with some excuse. But fate had a more dramatic discovery in store for me. Last Friday, I went to the jeweler to pick up our wedding rings. They were ready, engraved with our names and the wedding date. What a cruel irony. To hold in my hands the symbols of a union that was a complete lie. When I left the jeweler, it was 4 in the afternoon. I thought I'd stop by the church to leave the rings in the pastor's office, since he was supposed to keep them until the ceremony. I arrived at the church to find it seemingly empty. The doors were open, which was normal for that time of day. I went straight to the pastor's office, but he wasn't there. I considered leaving the rings on his desk with a note, but I decided to look for him first. I walked through the church corridors, calling his name. No answer. I went to the pastoral house at the back of the property. The door was ajar. I knocked, called out, nothing. I pushed it lightly, and it swung open. What I saw next will never leave my memory. In the living room, clothes were scattered on the floor. The dress shirt Pastor Samuel wore at the Wednesday service. The floral dress I recognized as Marília's. I heard voices and moans coming from the bedroom. My heart hammered against my ribs. My hands trembled so much, I almost dropped the small box with the rings. Each step towards the bedroom felt like an eternity. The door was slightly ajar, and through the gap, I witnessed the most devastating scene of my life. Marília was in bed with Pastor Samuel. Both of them were completely naked in the middle of the act. She was on top of him, her hair loose and swinging, moaning with pleasure. He was holding her by the waist, whispering words I couldn't quite make out. But I heard him say, "My woman," and I heard her reply, "My husband." For a moment, I was paralyzed. It was like watching a horror film, unable to look away from the repugnant scene. The woman I planned to spend my life with was there, completely given over to another man. And not just any man, but the one who was supposed to be our example of righteousness and morality. I don't know how long I stood there, but at some point, Marília turned her head and saw me. Her eyes widened in terror. She screamed, pushed Pastor Samuel away and scrambled to cover herself with the sheet. Lucas, it's not what you think. Pastor Samuel shot up, completely disoriented, fumbling for his underwear. My son, he stammered, I can explain. Explain what? I finally found my voice, and it came out as a roar. Explain how you're mocking God, the church, and me? I threw the ring box to the floor with all my strength. It burst open, and the wedding bands rolled across the bedroom floor. A cruel, perfect irony, seeing those symbols of our union scattered amidst a scene of pure betrayal. You're disgusting, I spat. You are the very image of the devil. Marília started to sob, trying to get closer. Lucas, please, let me explain. I love you. This meant nothing. Meant nothing? You were planning to use me as a clown at our own wedding. I read the messages, Marília. I know everything. Her face went white. Pastor Samuel sat on the edge of the bed, burying his face in his hands. My God, what have we done? He murmured. I ran from that cursed place. I got in my car and just drove, with no destination, wanting only to get away from the nightmare. I cried like I had never cried in my life. It wasn't just the betrayal that was tearing me apart, but the complete destruction of everything I believed in. My faith, my values, my trust in people. It all crumbled in that moment. I went to my parents' house. My mother knew immediately that something was terribly wrong, but I couldn't speak. How could I explain to a devout Christian woman that the pastor of our church was having an affair with my fiancé? How could I tell her that our wedding, which she had been helping me plan for months, was a complete sham? I spent the weekend locked in my old room, not answering my phone, not seeing anyone. Marília called hundreds of times, sent desperate messages, begging to talk. Pastor Samuel also tried to contact me, saying we needed to resolve this as men of God. On Monday, I made my first decision. I canceled everything related to the wedding. I called the caterer, the photographer, the florist, every single vendor. Fortunately, with 2 weeks to go, I was able to cancel most things without major financial loss. The hardest part was telling my family. I gathered my parents and my sister and told them everything. My mother cried as much as I had. My father was silent for a long time before exploding with rage. My sister wanted to go to Marília's house and beat her up. This will not stand, my father said, his voice hard as steel. This story needs to be exposed. That man cannot continue to lead a church after what he has done. On Tuesday, Marília showed up at my house. She looked terrible. Swollen eyes, disheveled hair. She begged me to talk. Said it had all been a moment of weakness, that the devil had taken advantage of her spiritual vulnerability. Lucas, I swear to God, I love you, she pleaded. What happened with Pastor Samuel was madness, a temptation that overpowered me. But I'm repentant. I want to marry you. Repentant, I said, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. Marília, you two planned to use me. You were going to let me marry you, thinking I had a faithful wife, just so you could keep seeing each other behind my back. No, it wasn't exactly like that. It was exactly like that. I read the messages. Marília, all of them. She collapsed right there on our porch. Through her sobs, she confessed that she had truly fallen in love with Pastor Samuel. She said she tried to resist at first, but he had convinced her that their love was true, a gift sent from God. He told me God was separating you from me to bring us together, she cried. That our love was so pure, it transcended social conventions. And you fell for that ridiculous line? I asked, my voice tight. He's very persuasive, Lucas. He uses the word of God to justify everything. He said that even in the Bible, there are cases of men taking women who were promised to others when it was the divine will. Realizing that my ex-fiancée had been manipulated by a spiritual predator didn't lessen my anger. It only added a deeper layer of disgust for the man himself, for Pastor Samuel. He had used his position of religious authority to seduce a committed woman, twisting scripture to justify his own carnal desires. That very afternoon, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to expose Pastor Samuel publicly. I couldn't allow him to continue deceiving other families, corrupting other women, and mocking the faith of simple, sincere people. I started by gathering all the evidence. I saved every text and voice message from Marília's phone. She gave me her password as a sign of her repentance. I recorded her own audio confessions, detailing the affair. I collected proof of the times and places they met. My sister, who works in digital marketing, helped me build a complete, damning file. We organized everything chronologically, from the first romantic messages to their plans to use me in a sham wedding. The plan was simple. I would confront Pastor Samuel publicly during the Wednesday night service, right in the middle of his hypocritical sermon, in front of the entire congregation. But first, I decided to give him one last chance to do the right thing. On Tuesday, I called his cell phone and recorded the call. Pastor Samuel, it's Lucas. I need to speak with you urgently. My son, I'm so glad you called, he said, his voice smooth as ever. I've been praying for you, asking for wisdom to resolve this situation. What situation, Pastor? The one where you're cheating on your wife and mocking God? Silence on the other end of the line. Lucas, he finally said, let's meet in person. These things shouldn't be discussed over the phone. All right, I said. You have until tomorrow morning to confess everything to your wife and resign from the ministry. If you don't, I will expose everything at the service on Wednesday. My son, you don't understand the situation. You can't do this to the church. I haven't done anything to the church, Pastor. You have. You betrayed the trust of every single one of us. I hung up. My final offer of mercy had been made. On Wednesday morning, I received an unexpected call. It was Pastor Samuel's wife, Claudia. Lucas, my son, I need to talk to you. My husband told me everything. I was surprised. Apparently, Pastor Samuel had decided to confess after all. Mrs. Claudia, I am so sorry. So sorry you have to go through this. Lucas, I know my husband made a terrible mistake, but he's repentant. He's willing to seek spiritual and psychological help. Isn't there a way we can resolve this within the family without exposing it to the whole church? I felt a pang of pity for her. Married for 15 years, a mother of 3, only to discover her husband was having an affair with a 25-year-old. Mrs. Claudia, I understand your pain. But Pastor Samuel didn't just betray you and me. He betrayed the entire congregation that trusts him. People have a right to know what kind of man is leading their spiritual lives. But think of the children, Lucas. My children will suffer so much from this exposure. It was a difficult moral dilemma. On one hand, I didn't want to harm innocent children. On the other, I couldn't allow Pastor Samuel to remain in a position of leadership after such a profound deception. Mrs. Claudia, if Pastor Samuel publicly resigns today, stating that he has personal issues to resolve. I won't go into the details of the affair, but he must leave the ministry. He's already agreed to that, Lucas. He's going to announce tonight that he's stepping away indefinitely. It seemed like a reasonable solution. Justice would be served without completely destroying his family. But things did not go as planned. I arrived at the church that evening, prepared to witness Pastor Samuel's resignation. The sanctuary was packed, as usual. He stepped up to the pulpit with his typical confident demeanor, greeted the congregation, and announced the hymns. When the time for the sermon came, I expected the announcement. Instead, he began a sermon about false accusations against men of God, about how the devil uses those closest to us to attack spiritual leaders. Brothers and sisters, he preached, looking directly at me in the pews, we live in difficult times, where the word of holy men is questioned by people moved by envy and resentment. There are those who cannot accept that God blesses his servants, and so they create slander to try and destroy prosperous ministries. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The cynical man was turning the tables, playing the victim, and painting me as some jealous slanderer. When I realized he had no intention of resigning, that he was trying to publicly discredit me before I could make my accusation, I did something I never imagined I'd be capable of. I stood up, right in the middle of the service. Pastor Samuel, you are lying to this congregation. A deathly silence fell over the church. Every head turned to face me. Pastor Samuel's face went pale. Brother Lucas, please sit down. This is not the time or the place. Oh, this is exactly the time and place, I said, my voice ringing through the quiet hall. It's time for this church to know what kind of man is leading you. I walked to the front of the sanctuary, pulled out my phone, and connected it to the church's sound system. You're all about to hear the real voice of Pastor Samuel. I started playing the audio from the most incriminating messages. His voice, filled with false romance, whispering sweet nothings to Marília, planning their secret meetings, talking about how they would get rid of me after the wedding. The shock in the congregation was palpable. People gasped, their hands flying to their mouths. Others began to cry. Many rose to their feet in outrage. Pastor Samuel tried to step down from the pulpit to stop me, but a few deacons held him back. These are lies, fabricated audio, he shouted. This man is possessed by a demon of slander, but I didn't stop. I showed the screenshots of the messages, reading some of the most revealing parts aloud. The congregation erupted. Some people started walking out, while others demanded an explanation from the pastor. The situation devolved into chaos. Finally, Pastor Samuel broke. He collapsed, admitting in front of everyone that he had given in to temptation. He begged for forgiveness and said he would resign immediately. But the damage was done. That night, our church imploded. Families were divided between those who wanted to give Pastor Samuel a second chance and those who demanded his immediate expulsion. The church council was called for an emergency meeting. In the days that followed, the story spread throughout the city. Our congregation became a topic of gossip in other churches, on social media, even on local radio. 2 weeks later, unable to bear the social pressure, Pastor Samuel and his family moved away. Marília couldn't stay either. Her family was devastated by the scandal. especially since she had been publicly exposed as the other woman. She moved to Sao Paulo to live with an aunt. Today, 6 months later, I'm still processing everything that happened. Our church went through a complete leadership overhaul. We brought in a pastor from another denomination, and slowly, it's rebuilding. Many people left, but others have come, drawn by the new standard of transparency we've established. As for me, I went through a profound reconstruction of my own faith. At first, I questioned everything. How could God let this happen? How could I have been so blind? How could I trust people who were capable of such deceit? I went to therapy, talked extensively with my family, and read a lot about deception and betrayal. I learned that flawed people don't invalidate true faith, that God isn't responsible for the evil some commit in His name. I also learned about the signs I had ignored. Marília's change in behavior, the way Pastor Samuel conducted his counseling sessions, small details that, at the time, I interpreted as spiritual zeal, but were actually red flags of an inappropriate relationship. Marília has tried to contact me a few times. She sent letters asking for forgiveness, saying she's in therapy and now understands how she was manipulated. I haven't replied. Some wounds are too deep to be healed by a simple apology. Pastor Samuel has never tried to speak to me again. I heard through the grapevine that he left the ministry completely and now works as a salesman at a building supply store. His wife filed for divorce 3 months after the scandal. One thing that still bothers me is knowing that many people from the old congregation still defend him. They say he was a victim of temptation, a good man of God who had a moment of weakness. Some even blamed me for exposing the situation publicly. You could have handled that privately, they'd say. You didn't have to destroy his ministry in front of everyone. But I don't agree with that mindset. When a religious leader commits this kind of betrayal, it's not just a personal problem. It's a violation of public trust, an abuse of power that affects the entire community. The people have a right to know who is leading their spiritual lives. If I had remained silent, Pastor Samuel would have continued preaching about morality while carrying on his affair with Marília. He would have kept counseling couples while actively destroying my relationship. And who knows how many others. I'm almost certain my ex-fiancé wasn't an isolated case. He would still be seen as a pillar of righteousness while living a life of sin. I don't regret exposing him. It was painful. It was embarrassing. But it was the right thing to do. Other families were spared from going through what I went through. Other women were protected from being manipulated by that spiritual predator. Lucas's story teaches us fundamental lessons about human relationships and the abuse of power. First, that positions of leadership, whether religious, professional, or social, do not guarantee a person's integrity. It is crucial to question, to verify, and not to accept everything blindly, especially when red flags appear. Exposing abuse and betrayal is an act of courage that protects others, because silence only benefits predators and traitors. And for those of you who have followed this story, please leave a comment below. Have you ever experienced a situation of betrayal or a breach of trust? How did you handle it? Your experiences can help others who are facing difficult times. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and share this video with anyone who needs to hear this message. Until the next story.